Farrell, do you have me now?
Buddy, you are coming in loud and clear.
I'm coming in loud and clear. How are your fantasy football teams heading into Week 9, my friend?
You know what? I've got a few playoff qualifiers, and I'm still in there swinging, Balky. It's difficult with all the I share the same common aspects with every other fantasy player in the FFPC as we struggle to put together a healthy roster and promises of previously injured players returning early in the week or not realized at the end of the week. But, we move onward, and opportunities for new players are on the horizon. Free agency continues open through Sunday morning, and, I think it's just a wonderful season with extra wrinkles and extra challenges to make it all the more worthwhile when you win.
It is, and listen, I do a local fantasy football show in Northeast Wisconsin, and it's not a sponsored segment yet, but the Bulky Braggart segment is coming up here shortly. Now, Farrell, I only went 12-10 this past week in all my fantasy leagues, but as I look at the 22 managed leagues I have with wins and losses and victory points and non-best ball leagues, out of those 22 leagues, I only have 2 losing records. The rest I'm either 500 or above. And I don't know if that is a record for me, but I certainly can't remember sitting here on November 5th where I had that many winning records. I'm not going to say this is my year because I had a great year last year, but things are looking up for me. And I hope things are looking up for you. I know things are looking up for our guest tonight coming up on the program tonight. We are going to pontificate about the impact Adrian Peterson is going to have on the stretch run of the fantasy season, whether Michael Carter has broken through as a top 20 FFPC running back option the rest of the way, and the 7th place team in the Footballguys Players Championship. It is owned by Bill Potter. He has his team positioned to win $500,000. He's going to stop by. He's going to talk about the toughest lineup decision he's facing this week and much more. Shout out to the chat room right now. You guys can post any questions you might have in there right in the chat room. If you want to connect with us on Twitter, we are at HSFF Hour. The show is. I am at Eric Balkman. And, of course, check out Farrell's Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship at KFFSC.com. Check Farrell out at J. Farrell Elliott. And, of course, the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship at KFFSC. Facebook.com/HSFF Hours where you can reach us. And, of course, if you want to chime in and talk with us, 347-426-3682. That's 347-GAME-OVA. HighStakesFantasyFootball@gmail.com is where to reach us. If you have any questions for us, send them in now. This is your final warning. We'll try to get to all the chat room questions, all the tweets, all the emails in the fantasy feedback segment coming on later in the show. Thanks to our audio engineer and my best friend, Bryce, and our and our producer and our mutual friend, Rob. As a reminder, ladies and gentlemen, go to rotoviz.com/podcast. It's not up yet. It should be up shortly. Billy Muzio from Fantasy Data, he was on the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown this past week. He has the number 1 team in the $10,000 entry FFPC High Society League, along with his co-owner, David Hubbard. He has that position to win a lot of money this year. He also has 3 teams in the top 100 in the Footballguys Players Championship. A lot of great knowledge from him this week, so check that out, rotoviz.com/podcast. Let's get into the Fantasy Flash tonight. Dolphins head coach, Farrell, Brian Flores, said Devonte Parker had a setback in practice. He not only is doubtful to play this weekend against the Texans, according to Marcel Louis Jacques on Twitter, but, beg your pardon, he has been placed on injured reserve, which means he is going to be out for the next 3 weeks. Devonte Parker, no stranger to the trainer's room, and you not only cannot plan for him in Week 9, but you really can't count on him until Week 12. So the question I bring to you, Farrell, is not necessarily what's going to happen when Devonte Parker comes back. What's going to happen this weekend against the Texans, specifically with Tua Tagovailoa, with Jalen Waddle, and with Mike Gesicki, who all should, as long as health, dictates, they should all have big games against the Houston Texans. Jalen Waddle has averaged 6.67 receptions on 9.67 targets when Devonte Parker has been inactive this season. Mike Gesicki has he's been awesome so far this season, and this should only get better against the Houston Texans. Your thoughts? I guess the takeaway here for me is you start Waddle, you start Gesicki. Tagovailoa is dealing with that hand injury on his throwing hand. What are your thoughts on starting him this week, knowing that Parker is going to be out?
Tua is scheduled to play, Balky, so I'm going to put him in my lineups, and he'll have to play as a backup to a couple of quarterbacks that bye week unavailability, especially Tom Brady. Now, I want to mention one thing about Parker. That's why Parker went so late in the drafts. Fantastic talent. We advised putting him in the lineup last week, and if listeners did that, they were rewarded. But I started to look up how many games he's missed, and, it doesn't matter. His sporadic, unavailable status has led him to just be ignored by fantasy players and not to be trusted even when he's available to play. Waddle is a solid player in an offense that I thought would frequently try to get him downfield and use him on slant passes, run a few skinny posts. It's a lot of vertical passing in those targets. That's the only downside about it. That ability to catch the ball and move goes away the closer you get to the goal line. Thus, we raise the possibilities of Gesicki being targeted. There's other tight ends on that roster that seem to step up. If they try to bracket Gesicki and give him problems at the offensive line, it can be a long day for him. That's when you see the other two guys catching balls at the tight end position down there. Buried on this depth chart is Mack Hollins, a player that I very much admire, a big, tall receiver and a good red zone target. There's going to be lots of red zone opportunities against the Houston Texans, and that's why Waddle's an easy start for me, but so is Tua.
Yeah, it's very, and I picked up Tagovailoa in a couple of leagues where I had Tom Brady this week, and I'm still starting him with full confidence. I know Brian Flores said he's a little bit banged up right now, but everything I've read, everything I've seen, everything I've heard makes it seem like he is going to be good to go for this game. So I am starting him, and as I look at the point spread in this game, the Texans are a 6-point favorite with a 46.5 over-under, so that should mean good things for the Texans offense. Tagovailoa, Mike Gesicki, and Jalen Waddle, all beneficiaries there for sure. Flip it to the West Coast. John Lynch, who is the general manager of the San Francisco 49ers, said that Jeff Wilson could be activated from the PUP list and play this weekend against the Arizona Cardinals. And we're going to get into Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins here shortly. But this was the Niner side of this was reported by Matt Mayoko on Twitter. Jeff Wilson has not played in 2021. He actually had a knee injury all the way back in May. Now, Kyle Shanahan, you would like to think, is going to figure out a way to get Jeff Wilson involved if he is indeed active for Week 9. Elijah Mitchell has been awesome the last 3 weeks here for the 49ers so far. It's very difficult for me to see a pathway to saying Jeff Wilson is a good start in Week 9, Farrell. But, the fact of the matter is, if he's available in your FFPC leagues, and I'll look up his ownership percentage in the main event here shortly on, of course, at fantasymojo.com. Darren Armani, who is the godfather of the Pros vs. Joes and helps us out with the ADP and the ownership percentages each and every week here on the program. It's very difficult for me to see a pathway to starting Jeff Wilson this week, but for sure you got to find a way to roster this guy because he could figure into the equation going forward, right?
Certainly, and I look back to Mostert. Remember when we were still drafting Mostert, Balky? This is a quagmire of disappointment, this San Francisco backfield. And if you happen to land Mitchell, your free agent dollars have not been frittered away, and you have a player that is going to increasingly get better in the NFL. He's got a lot of season in front of him, and he's largely, compared to a number of running backs across the leagues, dealing with fresh legs. So I really like Elijah Mitchell. And that, I noticed in some free agency, when I look at my competitors' balances, I wonder what some of these guys are waiting for. I don't think it's Jeff Wilson. I think Jeff Wilson could be a complementary piece, especially if you have other Niners backs or if you two acquired Mitchell and can somehow miraculously still have bargaining funds still available to bid. But I think you might wait with what you might have coming down with other retired running backs coming back to the game. You might consider smaller bids on Mitchell, if any at all.
Yeah, and I think that's the way to play this here. And we're going to get to our guest here tonight, Bill Potter, the 7th place team in the Footballguys Players Championship. A question from the chat room right away. It's Christian McCaffrey and whether he is going to be active this week. Now, I am looking at what David Newton, who covers the Panthers for ESPN, said. Matt Rule said that if Christian McCaffrey is indeed active this week, he would not be taking on 40 to 50 snaps in offense. They want to be smart about this, and that means he is going to be brought along slowly. So that is the situation we're looking at right now, which kind of creates a quagmire for fantasy owners, Farrell, because there's a lot of people that want to play, myself included, that want to play Chuba Hubbard. There's a ton of people who want to play, myself included, Christian McCaffrey. So how do you, as it stands right now, and we'll probably get more clarity about this on Sunday, but how do you handle Christian McCaffrey in your lineups this week, knowing that if he is active, he's not going to see his normal McCaffrey workload?
Well, not every owner is Bill Potter. Not every owner is Meyer and Mueller, and our good friend Rick Ross, who last time I checked the FFPC top 20 is at 13th. We're in a situation, Bucky, where we're challenged with who to get in, and you would have to say that, okay, if I can get 10 carries out of Christian McCaffrey, who's a great competitor, chomping at the bit, if he's on the field, he's healthy enough to play, what will he do with those 10 carries? Even if he's splitting carries with Hubbard, what will that look like? And you're going to be very, very tempted to play him over who might be your last flex or your second running back if you happen to play in Kentucky. So I don't think that you can just take a wait-and-see approach with that player. Conversely, Hubbard has produced, and he's produced well. And if you expect Carolina's game plan to be improved with the return of McCaffrey, Hubbard should have enough rushing attempts, enough pass catching to make it worthwhile for him to play. There's not a lot of offensive firepower in the receiver core outside of Moore there in Carolina. Disappointments from Anderson. Terrence Marshall has been inactive. These are players that drafters were counting on earlier in the year. I think you can count on your Panthers that remain standing. And McCaffrey, certainly, you had big hopes at the start of the year. There's no reason to leave him on the bench if he's playing in the game.
Yeah, and I'm kind of with you on that for sure. I want to switch from one running back situation on the East Coast to another one semi on the East Coast, and that's the one that Mike Garafolo from NFL Network has reported on today. According to him, Adrian Peterson has impressed the Titans and has been promoted to the active roster. Now, according to NBC Sports Edge, Adrian Peterson is going to serve as the team's primary ball carrier against the Los Angeles Rams this week. He will be a game script sensitive fantasy option with obviously Jeremy Mcnichols playing a role on third downs and pass catching downs for the Titans this week. The Titans are underdogs this week as they head to the West Coast to take on, quite frankly, what could be the favorites in the NFC this year, the Los Angeles Rams. But if he does fall into the end zone, score a touchdown, or get any goal line stuff, he could pay off dividends. So I look at Adrian Peterson this week, Farrell. And I probably am screwing myself by saying this, but and this is a detriment to my own fantasy prospects. I looked at my Kentucky rosters and my Kentucky waiver bids and Kentucky waiver results on Thursday morning. Adrian Peterson wasn't even picked up in every single league, so he is out there in some KFFSC leagues. I placed some bids on him, some small bids on him. We'll see if I get him or not. I placed some bids on him in some leagues. I need some running back help, which is insane considering how much the Titans count on the running game, how much they counted on Derrick Henry, and quite frankly, how much of, Adrian Peterson is a poor man's Derrick Henry, but a lot of what he does mirrors what the Titans have been looking for in their running back. So you look at Adrian Peterson against the Rams this week, not the greatest of scenarios, but 4 teams on bye. How much does Adrian Peterson factor into the flex consideration, not only in the KFFSC, but in FFPC leagues as well?
Well, Balky, before I answer that question, I have beaten some of our visitors, some of our listeners, and most of our guests over the head to come play in Kentucky, sometimes subtly and sometimes with very much with an iron pipe. But I will tell you that you just gave the best endorsement for any players to come play in Kentucky if we actually had a group of 12 owners that would sleep on acquiring Adrian Peterson. Now, I think that falls into the situation of many of our fantasy players feel that older running backs' time is done. I don't know where that comes from, and I would like to disabuse people of that notion. Adrian Peterson is 36 years old. He played for Detroit last year. He rushed for over 600 yards. He averaged 4 yards a carry. He scored 7 touchdowns on a subpar team. He also caught some balls out of the backfield. We picture this guy as a Minnesota Viking, Balky. I looked this number up. 116 starts with the Vikings, but he's had 47 starts with the other stops along the way, included with Detroit, Arizona, and Washington. Now, he comes with fresh legs and anxious to get back to it. He is a perfect fit. You described a run-heavy team, but they're a run-pass option team with Peterson in the backfield. So what does that mean for the other players? We're going to see more movement, more work with his feet from Tannehill. We're going to see different kind of route running from the receivers, but we're still going to see Brown flashing across the middle, getting separation, and getting the ball. We're not going to miss those opportunities. Losing Henry, there's a great deal of frustration to opposing defensive coordinators when Henry is on the field. But that does not go away with the different things that this offense can do with the different talents in the quarterback. So this is when we're going to have to see Tannehill step up. Peterson will be a great complement to that. They cannot cheat on Tannehill because of Peterson. We'll talk more about his backup later, which is also an interesting player. Mcnichols getting his opportunity. But my goodness, why would you sleep on this player? Now, he's not going to get the same kind of carries that Henry had, but he's coming to it. He's ready to play. He's missed it. We all think that the players miss playing on Sunday when they're away from the game. If I was a veteran player, I would never retire from football. I would never put in my severance papers and draw that money, especially because I know I want to get back. I want to be around the locker room. I want to be around the practice. I want to have this purpose in my life. That's what Adrian Peterson's returning to. And he's going to help his team perhaps go all the way. And we'll get a glimpse of what those games in January and February might look like when we see this Rams-Titans matchup.
Yeah, no, you're totally right, and I'm looking forward to it. I'm also looking forward to hearing from Bill Potter, the 7th-place team in the Footballguys Players Championship. Here coming up in just a minute, he is sipping on white Zinfandel and snacking on the charcuterie tray we have provided for him in the green room right now. The last thing I want to get to before we get to Bill Potter is the Saints situation. Ian Rappaport has reported that Trevor Simeon is going to be the starting quarterback for New Orleans against the Falcons this week. Simeon threw for 159 yards and 1 touchdown after Jameis Winston tore his ACL and as well as some other knee damage in the win over Tampa this week. Now, he gets the start against Atlanta. Taysom Hill, who is battling the concussion, has already practiced in full this week, so you'd like to think he is going to be ready to play. Sean Payton has already said that he will get some action this week. I picked him up in a couple of Kentucky leagues, Farrell, but I do have some bids in on some other quarterbacks. Jordan Love is one of them. Just in case I change my mind on Sunday and I don't want to play a quarterback in Taysom Hill that is not going to get the full complement of snaps, even though he should get the extra rushing yardage and the rushing attempts for the New Orleans offense this week. The question is not about Taysom Hill or Trevor Simeon or Jordan Love or anybody about that. It's about the New Orleans skill position players. You're still playing Alvin Kamara. What about Marquez Callaway? What about some of the other pass catchers? Are they a bench right now with Simeon, or do you like the fact that Simeon showed something last week and maybe gives hope to some of these other New Orleans pass catchers?
I've been familiar with this player for a lot of years. He's a Northwestern product. My long-beloved client, Brian Peters, and Trevor are close buds. You know, I remember from his college days, he had one very, very strange stat. He threw for almost 400 times in his senior season and only 7 TDs. I never did quite figure that out. But this guy, he's got the construct of an NFL quarterback. He's no young guy. He's 30 years old. He's 6'3". He's good size. He sees the field. He can't move very well. He's very, very slow-footed, but he's elusive in the pocket. He's got that old Eli Manning type kind of thing about him, which would be beneficial for the wide receivers. So you're going to play Callaway. Those of you that don't, Tre'Quan Smith can consider him as a potential put in your lineups. You're going to have life at the tight end position in New Orleans, and you're going to like what he does. It's going to be, for lack of a better word, dependable. He's got 25 starts on his resume. He's got a piece of that rock that he wears on his hand with the Super Bowl ring from Denver. This guy, you know, people were throwing up their arms and looking around like, who is this? Well, he's the perfect Sean Payton quarterback. Sean Payton, I think, sees himself. We've talked about this before. He sees himself as the quarterback whisperer, and I think he feels that his offense in the hands of a smart guy like this, he's a very, very smart football mind, can lead his team to victory. There's no learning curve with Trevor Simeon. He's seen it all. The Denver, Vikings, Jets, Titans, now he's in a position now to actually make a difference for a team and lead them to great success. So good for him, good for his opportunity. And I think with certain of these wide receivers, you can find a more consistent start. And that's what we've all wanted out of Callaway, is opportunities and consistency, because we haven't seen that.
What we will see is an opportunity for a guy who's been very consistent so far in the Footballguys Players Championship this year to offer some great fantasy advice for all of our listeners tonight. He's been very patient in the green room. He is dusting the cracker crumbs off his mustache right now and finishing the last of his white wine spritzer in there. He started playing fantasy football about 7 years ago, became completely attached, and been playing with the FFPC, with classic competitions, won a league in 2019, flipped the winning entry into a Footballguys team last year, and currently his squad sits in 7th place in the 2021 Footballguys Players Championship. Please welcome onto the show Mr. Bill Potter, the clever whale himself. Bill, welcome to the HSFF Hour, man. Thanks for doing the show this week.
Hey, it's my pleasure, guys. Nice talking to you this evening.
It's great talking to you, and congrats on getting up to 7th place in the Footballguys Players Championship as you chase that $500,000 grand prize. We're going to talk fantasy football with you here shortly, Bill. But before we do that, can you tell us what you're doing to spend your time, doing for a living right now when you are not crushing the FPC, my friend?
Well, Eric, I own a small business. We do interior blinds and plantation shutters, and I've been in that business for about 20 years.
Bill, I think that answer just completely shut down Eric.
Okay.
He's obviously measuring. He's gone to he's measuring for drapes. So he's pulling them all off. He's looking for shutters and blinds. What's the top brand name in the blind business right now, Bill?
Probably the top blind company out there is Hunter Douglas. They're the big boy. Yep.
I love it. Well, you are the big boy in the FFPC. Congratulations on the 7th place position right now. That's a pretty good spot. Lucky number 7 to make a run at it. I've been looking over some of your lineups. The first guy that I want to talk about, we lauded on what Adrian Peterson is going to do for the Tennessee Titans, and honestly, Jeremy Mcnichols, I don't believe he should be a forgotten piece of the puzzle here in Tennessee. That run-pass option, the pass part of that would slowly develop and make Mcnichols quite a nice target in this offense. Plus, I think that player, I can remember him at Boise State. I think he has some good wheels. I think he can break tackles. He's a capable player. You picked him up in the 2nd round of free agency, I believe. Maybe you were somewhat prescient last week as to what might be forthcoming with Derrick Henry. Why did you get him, and when are you going to play him?
Well, I picked him up. As you said, I was looking at this lineup, and I said, Derrick Henry is a key cog here. I have no backup to him if he goes down. And at the time, Jerry Mcnichols was available. I knew he wasn't the same type of back, but I felt like there would be some opportunities. And when I play him, like this weekend, I think it's a good weekend to play Jerry Mcnichols because I believe they're going to be playing from behind, and there's going to be a lot of run in the passing game. And that'll be the times that I pick to put him in the lineup. This weekend, he's not going to make my starting lineup. I just have better options, I think.
I'm looking at this
Balky,
right
are
now,
you back
Bill.
with us?
There
he is.
Yeah, no, I am. I apologize for that. I'm looking at this right now. This is a question from the chat room that our buddy Wasp Guy brings up. And not Wasp Guy, beg your pardon. Dave Gerzak, Dizzle, wants to talk about
That's a watch guy.
Elijah Moore. Elijah Moore. Last night, 7 catches, 84 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Now, granted, some of it was garbage time, trying to come back against the Colts, and most of it was with third-string quarterback Josh Johnson. So the question here to you, Bill, is Elijah Moore, a guy that a lot of people were excited about before the season started. How likely is this type of production going to be to continue this year? Can we expect Elijah Moore to be, a borderline number 1 receiver? I know Corey Davis was out this week. Or are you still skeptical on what's going to happen with Moore going forward?
Yeah, I'm not questioning the talent that Moore has. I just have a question whether Zach Wilson can get him the ball. And Zach will be back, I'm sure. And for whatever reason, he seems not to look at him, or he hasn't looked at him so far this year. Guys, Elijah Moore's got all kinds of talent. And I think if you put the ball in his hands, he's pretty electric. But so far, up until this last week, we just haven't seen it. And, of course, Zach Wilson was not the quarterback for this week.
That's true.
Right,
hey,
Bill,
Balky, I've got a follow-up before you move along on this.
Go ahead.
On this Elijah Moore question, and my follow-up is, Bill, excuse me while I do quick counseling with my co-host here. There is no such thing as garbage time in the NFL. This is not the NBA. There is no such thing as garbage time. Bill, you have a pleasing Southern accent to your lingo there. Where are you from, sir?
Well, I'm sitting in Pensacola, Florida, as we speak.
Yeah, there you go. And it's just, and we understand that in no time is especially with a player of such an SEC culture to him as Elijah Moore, that those numbers have been promoted in anything close to garbage time. But that game was very much and he single-handedly with the receiver corps. But anyway, we won't relive that. But I will return to more Elijah Moore commentary, but I just had to get that in there. Balky, I think you've got questions about the quarterback play from last night.
Well, yeah, and that's what I want to kind of touch on a little bit, because this was a conversation a decision that I was faced with in a lot of my leagues with my quarterback situation. Carson Wentz was awesome last night. Now, you could have played him last night against the Jets. You decided to get Taysom Hill off the waiver wire, Bill, and you're going to start him against the Falcons instead. So my question right now, we know Trevor Simeon is starting for the Saints. Are you still rolling with Taysom Hill against Atlanta, knowing that he is going to play some? Or are you going to go after somebody else on the FFPC waiver wire here before Sunday afternoon?
Yeah, I'm going to pick up somebody else off the waiver wire. When I made that decision, that was a hard decision I had to make this week. And when I made the decision, obviously, I thought that Taysom Hill was going to be the starting quarterback against Atlanta this week. And I like the high, he's always, when he's been out there, he scores a lot of points, a lot of fantasy points. I do think going forward that he's going to be very valuable to my team. It's just that I'm going to pick up somebody like Tyrod Taylor or somebody to plug in this week to be the bridge quarterback until next week.
You might enjoy that. Having tough decisions on the waiver wire is one thing. Having tough decisions about lineup is another. And then we always have that pall of disappointment that seems to drape over the Thursday night game. And then we had a real bust-out offensive game last night on both sides. My toughest decision of the week was Elijah Moore. How do I put him in the lineup everywhere? I've got him on 9 different teams, and I played him on 5 of them, and I feel like a complete failure for not going 9 for 9. Do you have, I think it's important that the listeners realize that you, and I can understand why you're not playing Mcnichols, you're 7th place. You do have great choices, but even at that tall cotton that you're living in, what are the tough decisions making a lineup this week? I mean, who are some of the real problems? And sometimes it can be because you've got 2 really great players. How do you separate them?
Well, I look down this and on my bench, I've got probably 3 or 4 other players that could start for me on this team this week. Come close. I've got Devonte Parker. I think that he's in line to have a good week.
Right.
I've got Jeremy Mcnichols. I think he's in line to have a pretty good week. I have some wide receiver help there if I need it, Jarvis Landry. But the starting lineup, I think the guys I've got clicked in place, so many of these guys have a really good matchup this week. You got, we know what Jonathan Taylor did, and I got Cooper Kupp, and he's got a great matchup, and he's been terrific. And Brandon Cooks, he's got a terrific matchup, and Marquis Brown. Those guys, they're locked in. Who am I going to play over them? And then, and then I look at my running back. My RB2 is Cordell Patterson. Well, I'm not going to play those other guys over him. He's been playing great. So on this particular team, there's not many lineup decisions that I have to make. Obviously, I made the one about the quarterback, and I'm not crestfallen about that. I think Tyrod Taylor will give me a good week, and we'll be in good shape. And then, from there, Taysom Hill, I think, will be a good play for the rest of the season. But, this is a great team. You have to be lucky in this. You have to be lucky in drafting, and you have to be lucky in injury. Of course, I have the Derrick Henry injury, but this team is pretty well positioned to survive that, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we will get into that here shortly. Obviously, Mcnichols, we just touched on it, and we'll talk a little bit about him going forward here in the rest of the show. I do want to ask here as we go forward here with some of the other waiver decisions that you had to make this week, Bill. We're talking with Bill Potter, the 7th place team in the Footballguys Players Championship. T.J. Hawkinson is on bye for you. You actually end up getting Albert Oguewepenaum. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Oguewepenaum. And you get him. You're starting him over Hayden Hurst from Atlanta right now. Now, Farrell has been a big Hayden Hurst guy, at least in the course of the preseason, the drafting season. How good do you think Albert Oguewepenaum is going to be in Dallas this week against the Cowboys, knowing that Noah Fant officially will not be able to get off the COVID-19 list in time to play, and Albert Oguewepenaum is going to be the starting tight end for Teddy Bridgewater in the Broncos this week?
Yeah, when I look at Albert Owen. I'm not going to even try the last name. When I look at him, I mean, this guy is 260 pounds and runs a 4.39 40. I mean, he looks like Noah Fant out there. I don't think he's going to miss a beat. And I read something last year when he started in a game where Fant was not there. He had 25% of the target share, and he had 4 end zone targets in that game. So this guy could have a terrific week. Dallas is middle of the road in regards to defense against tight ends. So I think, and they're going to be playing from behind, so they're going to be passing a lot. So I think he's a solid play.
I think that's a more than solid play. With permission from Paul McCartney, I refer to that player as Uncle Albert. But I will tell you, the uncle will make a wonderful target. That's somebody else that's making a wonderful target. And I watch a lot of Baltimore Ravens, and I noticed more Marquis Brown this season, and I was hesitant in realizing that naturally the tight end is a dominant elite player at tight end, and then you had a rookie coming in, Bateman, and how much is Lamar Jackson going to throw the ball anyway? And this was back when they had lots of healthy running backs, and so I assumed that Marquis Brown would be the complementary player he's already, always been. I looked it up. 57 targets already this year. And there's a bye week in there, too. 37 catches, 566 yards, and 6 TDs. Is Marquis Brown now a set it and forget it every week start for you?
He is. And, last year there was a lot of hype around him, and this is kind of a post-hype type of guy. Mm-hmm. And the way it's just worked out, he's carved out this beautiful role. He's got a great relationship with Lamar Jackson, and Lamar is throwing the ball more because the running backs are hurt or diminished. And he's been so solid. I mean, he had that one game where he could have had a couple touchdowns that he dropped. So he's been very solid. I don't have any compunction at all in putting him in every lineup. I think he's always got a high-end number out there that he can reach.
To the quarterback situation this week, because we discussed, and by the way, full disclosure, Bill, I picked up Taysom Hill in a couple of leagues this week, and I ended up putting in for some other quarterbacks this week just in case I don't feel great about it on Sunday. But a quarterback that I think, and we've had some chatter in the chat room about it tonight, about him being a pretty good start this week, is Jordan Love. He gets the start for the Packers against, quite frankly, an historically bad Kansas City defense that, granted, will be getting Melvin Ingram this week, but even still, they've been pretty bad this year. If there was ever a week that Jordan Love could slip into a starting job like an old man into a hot bath, it is the Kansas City Chiefs defense. Granted, it's an Arrowhead. I get that. But even still, it's a bad defense. So how good or bad, do you think, of a start does Jordan Love make against the Chiefs, knowing that he's going up against a defense that's really been underperforming as far as high-stakes owners go in their leagues this Sunday?
Yeah, I think he's going to have an okay game. I don't think it's going to be a mind-boggling game because I think they're going to run the ball. And he may have some limited opportunities there. When I was trying to look at what I thought he might do for this game, we're looking at a little over 200 yards passing and maybe a touchdown, maybe an interception. And so that's not that's not bad. That'd be 15, 16 points. That's kind of what I think you would expect. That's my opinion of it. I just don't think they're going to give him a lot of opportunities to toss the ball.
Bill, we are going to sit that white wine that Zinfandel that Balky's talking about aside, and we're going to bring in your choice of bourbon. I'm a Wild Turkey man, which my good friend Jesse Bumstead tells me is rock gut bourbon. So we would, but we'll get you to the top shelf and get you the top of the line, and through that, a spectrum of clarity will emerge for you on this question. And, with permission John Lennon, I'll tell you that all you need is love, because that's all you're going to do. That's all you're going to have to do to rack up points. I think we're seeing the second coming of Jersey Mike here, with another bench quarterback coming in and pushing 400 yards. You had to love everything you've seen out of the New York Jets and what a quarterback change could do for a team. And I'm not so sure that Zach Wilson hurries back to this lineup. It's just a lot to be seen about the Jets. But no matter who's at quarterback, you would have to agree that Michael Carter has developed this year very, very nicely. Would you consider him a breakthrough player? Is he the kind of player? I know this past weekend it was only 9, or past Thursday night it was only 9 or so points, but can you see that this guy would be a player that would help a team that gets into the championship of the FFPC to really help a team make a run to be a 15, 16-point player per week?
Yeah, I do. I think Michael Carter is a tremendous talent. I think we all season long have been waiting for him to emerge, and I think we're seeing that emergence. He brings a lot to it. I love his pass catching ability, and he's got a 3-down set. I think he's going to be one of those type of players. I wish I had him on my team, I have to be honest with you. How about you, Farrell? You feel the same way?
More of it. I would just like to have more of him. Between he and Williams, it was a difficult decision to make about which one. And I've got a good pal that plays here in Kentucky, Justin McCord. When you look at two, and I know we're dealing about two players that came from the same college. That's why they're linked. Again, maybe the less expensive option would have been the one I should have gone with, and that would have been Michael Carter, because I think on draft capital, man, is he paying dividends. But both these guys are doing well, and I think we should remember that as we try to evaluate college players that play in tandems. These two are quite a tandem.
Talking with Bill Potter, the seventh place team in the Footballguys Players Championship right now here on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. I am Eric Balkman. He is Farrell Elliott, the commissioner of the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship. Bill, I want to get to a couple of emails here from some listeners, and the first one is from Phil in New York. He writes, "Dear Bill, what's an ideal amount of your $1,000 blind bidding budget to have left after 8 weeks of the season, in your opinion?" That is Phil in New York. Phil, thank you for emailing. Thank you for listening. So this is an interesting question, Bill, because I know you've managed, several blind bidding budgets in the FPC and other FFPC leagues over the year. As we look forward, you're roughly about halfway through the season. Math would say you should have $500 left. What do you think? What do you think is the appropriate amount that you should have left, or is it a sliding scale?
Yeah, it just depends. I don't have much left on this team. I've spent a lot of it. I think the fab budget early in the year is more valuable if you hit on the right players.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, towards the end of the season, you need to have enough to make some moves. One of the reasons I didn't pick up Adrian Peterson on this team is because I didn't have the fab budget to do it. I didn't feel, and so in some ways, you're hampered if you don't. But I think $500 would be too much to have at this point. I think, a couple $100 so you can change out defenses or kickers or whatever, or pick up somebody to fill a bye week. But at this point, I think most of the fab budget is probably, in my book, should be spent. That's the way I approach this. Somebody else. Go ahead, Eric.
No, Bill, I was going to agree with you there because, and maybe this is out of necessity, I have a lot of leagues that have far fewer than $500 bidding dollars left in my KFFSC leagues and more. Farrell, how are your FFPC teams looking right now as we head into Week 9? How, on average, or can you give us a mean of how many bidding dollars that you have left, and quite frankly, how many you thought you'd have left at this point at the start of the season?
Fellas, I am shopping at the Dollar Tree. That ultra bright toothpaste is with its whitening shine is what I'm looking for in the dollar tube. No, it's I have largely dissipated it, and I've been proud of some of my moves, less of others. I wish that I had been more aggressive on Cordarrelle Patterson. I want to go back to that and ask, did that take a bit of your fab budget? I asked Randy Mueller how quickly, when he came on the show, there's a player that he's been leaning on greatly, and I asked him how soon did he get to him, and he said after week 1. And so I assume he didn't have to spend a lot. When did you get him, and is that where a lot of your money went? And if so, what a great investment.
Well, I have to be honest with you, Farrell. I don't remember. I picked him up early in the season, and I don't believe I paid that much for him at the time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because I had Mike Davis on this team as well, and obviously he's been a little bit of a disappointment. But I picked up Cordarrelle Patterson, I believe, pretty early on, and I don't think I spent a lot of money on him. I don't believe.
It's amazing as you go through this what you can get later for less money. And a lot of the guys, I think, that have big budgets, they have them there because they're just hesitant to spend. They believe in their draft. Sometimes I don't think it's an exercise of supply and demand, as more as just anticipation and belief about players that have been drafted. It's certainly an inexact science, but it's one that I agree with Bill Balky. When I've got it, I'm spending it. Saturday night in Vegas, buddy.
Yeah, I wish I'd been more aggressive on Elijah Mitchell for San Francisco. I think I missed out on that one, and he's having a solid year, I believe. But that was one where I really kind of kicked myself. I didn't get him in any of my teams.
You're talking with Bill Potter, the 7th-place team in the Football Guys Players Championship heading into Week 9. One more email here for you, Bill, before Farrell gets to his final question. And that's from Kevin in Chattahoochee, Georgia. Hat tip to Alan Jackson on this one. He writes, "Hi, Bill. With James Robinson banged up right now, would you still feel okay starting him if indeed he is active against Buffalo?" Thank you for the email. Kevin in Chattahoochee, Georgia, where I learned how to live and I learned who I was, a lot about living and a little about love. That is according to Alan Jackson and, of course, Kevin in Chattahoochee, Georgia. Okay, so we look at James Robinson right now, fellas, and officially he will be listed as questionable against the Bills. I do believe he practiced in a limited fashion today. He gets the 1 o'clock game on Sunday, so that's going to be good. So I guess, Bill, the question is, if you own James Robinson in any of your leagues, how confident can you feel starting him this week, knowing that he has been limited in practice all week and knowing that he's facing one of the toughest defenses in the NFL, the Buffalo Bills?
Yeah, that's the problem. I mean, it's hard not to start James Robinson, but with him being banged up and against Buffalo, you wonder if Carlos Hyde is going to get more play than he normally would in this particular game. I wouldn't be very confident, to be honest with you.
Bill, this is, and Balky loves giving me this question, and I live for it. And it's a fun question in the start of the year. And we had 2 notable Italians and Sean on the show last week, and we proposed them the same question. And they're sharp guys, and they have good teams just like you. And boy, did they bomb! Everybody they gave us as a bust was a star, and everybody that they gave us as a sleeper is on Ambien. But I got to tell you, I'd like to hear it from you, because I think you have really got a hand on the pulse of what's going on in this. And maybe you just hinted, James Robinson is a perfect example, but a lot of people until the very end of FFPC main event drafting didn't have to spend draft capital on James Robinson of note.
Right.
I want to look at a player that you had to spend first, second, early third round draft capital on, that if you start him this week, you may regret it. And then I would like you to dig deep in that bag and find out that sleeper that you think high-stakes players should get into their lineup this week.
Well, I did a lot of thinking on this one. I think the one player, and he may not even play, there was late news today that he's on the injury report, is A.J. Brown. I really think this is going to be a tough week for the Tennessee Titans. I think there's a little bit of a transition here. Right. I think, they're having to feel out this running game. We don't know what that's going to look like. But on top of that, you got Ramsey on the other side. I'm just not sure that A.J. Brown will have a great week if he plays. I mean, he's late on I heard on just a little while ago, he's on the injury report today for a knee, I think. So he may not even play at this point. What I like is Van Jefferson.
Yes.
Yeah. I think he is, now Deshaun Jackson's out of that lineup. He's the long threat there. You know that the Rams are going to throw the ball all over the place. And I could really see him getting open for a couple long ones in this game early on. And so that's one I really like.
I agree.
The person we really like on tonight's program, it's the 7th place team in the Footballguys Players Championship. It is one Bill Potter. Bill, we cannot thank you enough for hopping aboard tonight, talking a little fantasy football with us. We certainly appreciated picking your brain and getting your insight, and we wish you nothing but the best. I hope that you cash that $500,000 check. We hope the ball bounces your way in Week 9, and don't be a stranger, man. Hopefully we'll talk again soon, dude.
All right. Well, I appreciate you guys. Y'all have a wonderful weekend, a wonderful football weekend.
Thank you, Bill.
And that's the plan, man. And the same to you. Bill Potter, ladies and gentlemen, the 7th place team owner in the Footballguys Players Championship as we head in to Week 9. Exciting stuff there from Bill. And Farrell, I should bring this up too. Bill has won a few FFPC leagues over the years, never been in contention like this before. And it's always exciting I've been saying this to the guests all season long. Oh, long way to go. Well, we're headed into Week 9 now. It's still, a significant way to go, but not nearly as long as it was in Week 1 or Week 2. So you can kind of see which teams of yours are dialed in, which teams of yours are ready to dominate, and which teams of yours, maybe need some work here going forward. And I assume that's the same with your teams, my friend.
Churchill said it best. We are, Balky, we are not at the end, but perhaps we are at the end of the beginning. And, we're in a place where we've got to, where the decisions we've made, we're now going to have to live with them, and every time I turn, Bill just informed me, and I'm not surprised that A.J. Brown is being reported as injured. I had not heard that yet. I did hear that Cole Beasley is being reported as injured, and guess what? They're on one of my better teams and both in the lineup this weekend. So you're in a situation where you're just, thank goodness, that Dave and Alex and the FFPC powers that be made the decision to extend free agency to later in the weekend because we need the time to put together the rosters to have the players to play. And I just hope with like Elijah Moore's and perhaps some lesser-known players, that they will step up for you. But it's, next man up football is my favorite kind of football, and there's great depth at the wide receiver position. If you use your imagination, you can see it happening.
I love that attitude, Farrell. I love that attitude, and that is going to carry a lot of people to fantasy greatness going forward. We're going to try to carry some people to fantasy greatness for the remainder of the season right now by answering some of the emails that we've gotten from some listeners this week, and we're going to kick things off with Dean in Cincinnati. No Tom Brady for me this week. I already had Tua Tagovailoa, but I picked up Teddy Bridgewater as well. Which guy should I go with? Thanks so much. That is Dean in Cincinnati. All right, so Farrell, as we look at this right now, obviously he has the GOAT, Tom Brady, on bye this week. He has a couple of options here. Now, I happen to like I know Tua Tagovailoa wasn't all that great last week, but he gets the Texans at home this week. Yum, yum, yum. I love that. Teddy Bridgewater goes on the road, but it's the Dallas Cowboys, which haven't been the greatest defense in the world. For me, and I know Tagovailoa is banged up a little bit, I think I'm going to go with Tagovailoa in this instance over Bridgewater. What say you, my friend?
I think you're making the right choice, Balky. And Dean was probably hedging his bets to make sure that Tua was healthy enough to play, but the matchup you won at home versus Teddy on the road. And quite honestly, I don't think that was a good pickup, and he should probably deal with Teddy after the weekend. The Denver team, despite all of those great athletic targets, they don't seem to have the game plan, and Teddy does not seem to be playing with the intensity in that they want to move the ball. It's just not a high-octane offense. They look that they're trying to extend the possessions. They've got good running backs, and they're going to feed them the ball more, and the passing game is going to become less and less a thing for the quarterback there. There's your 15-point quarterback. Tua, even in victory, will throw the ball 35, perhaps even 40 times.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, and I think that makes a lot of sense. I would go with Tagovailoa. I'm playing Tagovailoa in a couple of Kentucky leagues this week, too, so obviously I am on board with him. Okay, moving on to a player we have talked about throughout the podcast. Feel free to be as long or as brief as you want to be on this email from Bill in Coatesville, Pennsylvania. Will Jeremy Mcnichols' role be big enough for me to flex him out over Tony Pollard this week? So Tony Pollard, who has been, quite frankly, an underrated flex choice in the FFPC over the last several weeks. Tony Pollard obviously gets the Broncos at home this week. Jeremy Mcnichols, tough game on the road against the Rams. But, Farrell, the game script for Mcnichols, given that he should be the third down guy and catching passes, if the Titans do get down, that might make him a little bit more valuable in Week 9 lineups over Tony Pollard. Do you agree on that?
Yes, Mr. Bill Potter summed that up very eloquently for us. And it's difficult because all of us that own Pollard know that he's just one cutback away from taking one to the house. And who would he take it to the house against? A defense that overplays and a defense that just lost one of its better players in a trade. So I don't know how quickly I am to turn away from Pollard. Mcnichols, perhaps he has like a Ty Johnson game on Thursday night, and at the end you're looking at a good fantasy score, but Mcnichols has to catch a lot of passes and find the end zone. I don't necessarily think Pollard does. I'll probably stick with Pollard and take a wait-and-see approach on Mcnichols.
Let's move on and get to another email here from listener Daryl in Iron Mountain, Michigan. Great skiing in Iron Mountain, Michigan. Hi, guys. How concerned should I be about Rashad Bateman not practicing today? Should I start Van Jefferson instead? Thanks in advance. That is Daryl in Iron Mountain, Michigan. All right, so let's get into this Rashad Bateman thing just real quick since we have not talked about it throughout the program tonight. Rashad Bateman was not showing up on the injury report throughout the week for Baltimore this week. Then all of a sudden, out of the blue today, for whatever reason, he did not practice, and he's listed as questionable against the Vikings. John Harbaugh called the injury to Bateman, quote, a minor physical issue, and still says he has a very good chance to play against the Vikings. But, Farrell, I always get leery about two things. Midweek injury additions to the injury report, obviously, and then people not practicing on Friday. This is a groin injury officially for the Ravens for Bateman. And remember, the thing that kept Bateman out for the start of the season, you guessed it, it was a groin injury. Now, the Ravens do play at 1 o'clock on Sunday, so that's good. The Vikings defense is not great, so that's also good for Bateman. But when it comes down to Bateman or Jefferson, who are you rolling with here? And let's just assume, obviously, for the purposes of this conversation, Bateman is indeed active for the Ravens against Minnesota on Sunday, my friend.
Bateman active and in perfect health. It's not even a choice. Jefferson is the better choice here. Now, Bateman has put up some numbers in his return, but it took a 41-17 loss for him to do it and throwing the ball down the field. I don't think that's what we're going to see here. Minnesota is likely to lose this game and not challenge the Ravens in points. We're probably looking at a 30-21, something like that. So I don't see that as a big wide receiver game. for the Ravens. Jefferson, you can see the process developing. It started slow, but you can see how they're bringing this player along, and it looks like they want to make sure that he gets 6 targets a game, and he's going with this quarterback and in these game situations, he's going to make the most of those good passes that he can catch, run with after he catches it. I'm not as sold on Bill as Jefferson being as huge a downfield threat, but I sure would like to see it. And if Bill's right about it, Jefferson even shoots higher up the board.
Van Jefferson, 6 targets last week. He caught 3 of them for 88 yards. That makes it 6 straight games where Van Jefferson has gotten at least 4 targets. Now, bear this in mind. Of those games, Deshaun Jackson, except for the last one, Deshaun Jackson was on the team. He is no longer with the Los Angeles Rams, which is going to free up a lot of stuff for Van Jefferson. And consider this. Jefferson got those 6 targets. Then he had to exit the game with an ankle injury. He came back in, but when he was ready to come back in, the Rams are already up by 30. So there was no reason for him to come back into the game, too. So I think there's a lot to like about Jefferson. If you read between the stat lines here, and I know there's been a lot of people, and I'm looking at you, NFL Network, are saying to start Rashad Bateman this week. I am not on board with that. I think if it comes down to Bateman and Jefferson, you are playing Jefferson in your starting lineup. Final email, we go down to Texas, Farrell, to Alex in Amory, Texas. He writes, what's up, Farrell and Balky? I'm missing Hawkinson this week and only have Cole Kmet and Jonnu Smith to choose from. Which tight end would you two start? So this is a tough call for me, obviously, when we look at these two players. Neither one of them is a dominant, target monger, has a great matchup this week. You look at Cole Kmet on Monday Night Football against the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's in Western Pennsylvania for Kmet. And then Jonnu Smith also has to go on the road. He stays on the East Coast. He goes on against what I continue to say on this program, an underrated Carolina defense. He faces the Panthers this week. Farrell, I don't really like either one of these. I can be persuaded either way, but right now I'm leaning towards the talent. I'm leaning towards Kmet. It seems like Hunter Henry has sort of taken over the lead tight end role for the New England Patriots, supplanting Jonnu Smith as that lead tight end for the Patriots. Cole Kmet's still the leading tight end for the Chicago Bears, so I think that's where I fall in on this. Neither one with a great matchup. Kmet, to me, represents the higher upside option.
We must surrender all hope with these two choices. If you have $1 left in Fab budget, sir, please go to free agency and bid on Brevin Jordan, put him on the field with the Houston Texans, and hope for a continued success for the young tight end that should have been playing for the Texans all year long. But if you don't have $1 left, what you're going to do is go do the same thing that the Patriots did, who spent all their dollars on these two tight ends. Now, we said on the show many, many times preseason, Balky, that both tight ends would flourish in this offense, and I really don't know why they haven't. Jonnu Smith has had some really tough times. He started the first 2 games with getting targets. He had some real problems down at in New Orleans, but I think he found an end zone the next week against Tampa, and then in the last couple games, it's been completely silent. And I suppose it's from the emergence of the play and the accuracy of young quarterback Jones to get the ball to the wide receivers. Wide receivers are playing in this offense better than I thought they would. A lot of running backs carrying the ball, and the offense has not gone on long, sustained drives. You can begin to point to a lot of reasons. I suppose the biggest one is that Hunter Henry has been very successful in the red zone, which I thought Sanu would get some of that. But right now, Jonnu Smith, right now Jonnu is not featured as part of this pass-catching offense, which is hard to understand on a player that has so much investment in free agency for.
Farrell, I cannot thank you enough for that insight and for all the insight you have provided tonight. Great stuff, not only from you, but from our guest tonight. It was a tremendous episode. We have helped everybody, I think, to a great extent, get their lineups in order, get their second waiver wire in order. Billy Muzio on the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown this week talks a little bit about that. Check that out, rotoviz.com/podcast. He calls it free waiver. Make sure you're taking advantage of free waiver day, not only in the FFPC, but in the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship as well. Farrell, wish nothing but the best for you in Week 9. Hopefully the ball bounces your way. We'll do it again next Friday, my friend. Enjoy Week 9 in the NFL and your fantasy football teams, dude.
Thank you, Buck.
Farrell Elliott, ladies and gentlemen, you follow him on Twitter at Farrell Elliott. You follow the KFFSC on Twitter at KFFSC. This completes tonight's broadcast of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. I want to thank Bill Potter. I want to thank Farrell Elliott. I want to thank the FFPC. Of course, our audio engineer and my best friend Bryce, and our mutual friend and show producer Rob, and you, to all the listeners out there that are either listening to this live or downloading it and checking it out, streaming it later on in the week. Reminder, listen to the RotoViz Lowdown this week, rotoviz.com/podcast, with the fantasy data maven himself, Billy Muzio, crushing the FFPC High Society, as well as crushing the Football Guys Players Championship. Great podcast, great conversation with him. We'll be back next week, 10-9 Central, with 6th place FFPC main event team owner Pravir Srivastava will be on the show next week. Can't wait for that. Thank you so much for listening, everybody. Your weekend officially starts now.
This has been another episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, presented by MyFFPC.com. It was broadcast live and heard around the world. Balky and Farrell will be back next week with more analysis, interviews, and advice from guests much smarter than they are. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk with you again next week.
One of the things that I thought we did not touch on tonight, and it was by design, and I'll just make this real quick, the Aaron Rodgers vaccine thing. You know, we talked about Jordan Love. We didn't necessarily talk about Jones or Dillon as much as we probably should have, or, Allen Lazard or some of the other pass-catching options. This is a fantasy football show. If you want to talk about Aaron Rodgers and what he did with the Packers and what he didn't do with the public or the media, or however you feel about it, that there's a zillion other outlets for that. We try to stick to fantasy football in this program, and that's where we'll leave it. So I apologize if you're looking for more of that analysis tonight. It's not getting it on this show. So hopefully the ball bounces your way in Week 9, everybody. Good luck in all your high-stakes leagues, and we will be back next week to preview Week 10 with Pravir Srivastava. Cannot wait for that. Thank you so much for listening. Enjoy your weekend.